I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order on November 25th at 7 p.m. If we could all stand to say the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have our mission statement. Angela.
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in the global community.
Thank you. Roll call. Angela.
Sarah?
Here.
Jessica?
Here.
Kyle?
Here.
And Chris will be here later on. Margaret? Here. Sherry? Here. And I am present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Looking for an approval of the agenda.
I motion to accept the agenda as presented.
Support. Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Looking for a motion for the approval of the consent agenda.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the consent agenda as presented in the attached documentation.
Support.
Any discussion?
I would just like to recognize two new hires. Tomorrow I'll be meeting with Jamie Paxton, the coach for the JV girls basketball, and then Rebecca Wassam. She is replacing Christy Lashbrook, who will become the director December 1st. She's finishing her student teaching, so she's very excited and excited to have her join us on December 16th.
Very great. Welcome. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have our presentation, Dr. Ladd for the overnight trip. Yes, please.
Once again, to our every other year field trip that we've been doing. I believe this is our 8th time that we're taking kids to Washington. I think everybody has probably a copy of the forms for that.
Yes.
Too. Okay, so again, not a whole lot different. We've got a meeting scheduled with our Senator Stabenow, who's doing a really nice job kind of helping us coordinate everything this year. So I haven't checked, but it's probably she's probably up for election. She's doing a great job. We're going to leave on the 28th. We're going to fly out of Metro bright and early at like 5 o'clock in the morning, get into D.C., and then we spend the next 4 days in D.C. White House, Congress, Library of Congress, Supreme Court, adding the FBI this year to the mix, so that'll be fun. We haven't done that in a while. And the White House, provided they get the new fence. We're building a new fence higher around the White House this year, so that's hoping to be in there. Cost, students assume all the costs. There's no fundraising involved. We've kept the cost down to $625 this year, and moms and dads are generous enough to go along with us and help defray some of all that sort of good stuff. We're taking 12 students and 8 parents this year. So,
Any questions for Dr. Ladd?
questions?
All right. Well, thank you for everything that you do with the kids. We'll be voting on this in 2 weeks. You don't have to come back. Mr. Rumsley can let you know. Unless you would like to come back, then you're welcome to, of course.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Next up, we have the method of the bond sale and underwriter. Tammy.
Well, so I'll start. Tammy and I met with several underwriters, and after our last meeting, we had the opportunity to meet with Raymond James. When she and I went through each of the companies we interviewed and talked to, this one seemed to fit with what Richmond is, especially having the option of the community being able to buy in and buy bonds. So, do you have anything else you want to add, Tammy?
I don't think your microphone, because I can barely hear
Can
you.
you hear me now?
Not really. I mean, it doesn't seem like I couldn't hear you. Either,
Oh,
really.
I do too.
Let's try that.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. So we had the opportunity to meet with the various underwriters. Raymond James is the one that we were most impressed with. We had a lot of good conversations about what it would mean. This is an important part of our process because this actually gets us the dollars to begin the project. So if you don't have anything, do you have anything?
Just to add that we worked with RJ from PFM to get pricing from each of the 3 companies to see, how they compared. It was nice to have the third price to kind of see. One was low, one was high, and see where the third one fell. So it worked out really well to have Raymond James committee to be with us and are talking with RJ and telling us, assisting us with the decision on which one to recommend.
So RJ is very good at pointing out the pluses and minuses and making us make the decision, but he does give us the facts on all the strengths. So tonight we have the team from Raymond James. We have Paul Soma, Elizabeth Hennessy, Tina Webbs, and Chris, I never got your last name.
But now, and the end of the one.
All right, we have Chris. So, Paul, you gonna start?
Yeah.
So, turn over to Paul.
Thank you. I really appreciate being here, and I want to start firstly by just saying congratulations on a wonderful success. It's a great celebration to pass a bond, especially when it's a little tight. My background is I have been a superintendent. I've also been a business manager throughout the state of Michigan for schools. I worked 27 years in public education. I was actually the business manager in Romeo schools in the late 90s and the early 2000s. So that's a little bit about my background. And so when I say congrats and then also thanks, and I want to start by saying thanks for being board members. I know that it's a thankless job sometimes, and that comes from my experience. The fact that people put themselves out there, volunteer to do the work that is so important to our society, I've always appreciated, and when I get a chance to say thank you for that work, I want to do that. But ultimately, I'm here to say thanks for looking at us and allowing us to be your underwriter, and we're going to get into a little bit of that rather quickly. You have a comprehensive packet that we supplied, and so I won't go into a lot of that detail unless there are questions. And so really, the length of the conversation will be if you have questions. We gave you a background on Raymond James, and I just picked some of the highlights. You have the supporting background there. When I say, when I looked at just a couple things, one from a national perspective, I'm really proud of something that if you follow the bond industry, last week there was a socially responsible, there's actually a technical name to a bond issue that was done in California, almost $600 million. And those bonds were sold to support housing for homeless. And Raymond James was the lead underwriter for that. There was a syndicate of underwriters. Raymond James had the lead, and the state of California is raving about the work that Raymond James did there. So from a national perspective, very well known. We have a large footprint. Michigan presence, you can see the data. I won't, I'm sorry, I should have moved this forward. And this high level overview. So our Michigan presence, you can see that the data there. You have some of the background. We have a large presence, especially on the retail level, of working in communities across Michigan. We're committed to Michigan. Both Tina and Chris run the only retail underwriting desk in the state of Michigan. Raymond James is the only one that has one of those. Our commitment to Michigan is strong, and the data supports that. When we list our strengths, we talk about that commitment to Michigan, especially in the Michigan arena. We have a strong capital position that's explained in your handouts. If you want any questions on that, we can go into that. But we also have extensive retail capability, allowing for local distribution, which is what we've heard as one of the items that you as a board are looking for. There's some of the team that's going to be working on this, and you've met us, or we're being introduced right now. We have a little biography in there on each of those. If there's any questions, certainly we could ask that. But I want to move this forward to talk more on the technical side of things. And this is, talk about the bond sale process. And, for people that aren't familiar with what this means, the voters, your community, approved paying off a debt. That's what they approved. They approved the ability for you to go out there and borrow funds. And so what does that then mean? What happens now? Schools do this. I mean, if you look at all schools, people are selling bonds all the time, but individual schools don't do it all that often. So there's not a lot of expertise within the school system to do that. There's expertise outside, and that's where you look at the process. First, the community has to approve. Then the school district begins, and so Brian and Tammy have worked with, as they mentioned, PFM. Another real important part of that team is their bond counsel. And I'm sure that Troon will be talking to you, or has already talked to you, what they do is they make sure that these bonds are tax exempt on the federal and the state level, that every T, every I is dotted, that when we're saying that these are tax exempt bonds, they're truly tax exempt bonds that people are buying. And then getting to actually going to the market, you hire an underwriter, and that's us, that's what we're here for. We have distribution networks of both retail and institutional investors. And this is really the strength of Raymond James. Our retail is so substantial that we are able to make that connection. And if I was really good at PowerPoint, I would have drawn a line back to the start. We are able to connect to the local community. And you know, the folks that voted for this, they said, we will pay this debt back. By hiring us, what you're saying to them is, you can invest in our school system and actually receive some of that interest that you're paying on that debt. And it's something that we've done successfully in a number of school districts throughout the state. More and more districts are actually asking for this. And so recently we were brought in, we weren't even the lead underwriter, we were brought in by another underwriter that said, these guys want to get to the locals, can you help us with that? And we ended up getting more local sales than the lead underwriter at an 8-to-1 the dollar amount. So that's our expertise. We're very proud of that. I think it's one of the things that caused Brian and Tammy to make this recommendation. And then the next thing that is important to note is, you know, what happens now? Where do we go from here? And for that, I want to introduce my colleague, Elizabeth Hennessy. She goes by Liz. She's a 30-year almost veteran of public finance, has done literally billions of dollars worth of underwritings, and is an expert in the Midwest region. She's the Midwest Regional Director for Raymond James. She's my boss too. So, Liz.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks again for having us here tonight. This is a portion where we want to kind of go through the specific schedule with you so you can know what to expect. Tonight, we're reviewing the negotiated sale process and the retail outreach that we're going to be doing in the coming weeks and months. And also, we'll be adopting an authorizing resolution tonight, which sets forth the parameters for the bond issue, paramount according to the ballot request, and some of the calendar, and the fact that the bonds will be school bond fund guaranteed from the state of Michigan, which loans you their AA rating, which will help the bond sell. So with that, we want to talk a little bit about the process. One thing that Paul mentioned and that we want to make sure to do is make the bonds available to the community. So on January, if we go through this calendar, there's going to be things happening between November 25th and January 6th. And those are going to be getting your bond rating and working on the preliminary official statement. The district's bond rating is A3, okay? That's your underlying bond rating. As I mentioned, we're going to use the state school bond guarantee fund, so we'll be able to use the state's AA rating on that. And you should receive that bond rating the week of January 13th. But to speak more closely to our community outreach, we're going to send invites from Raymond James to community members, and we'll work with you on putting a list together. Whether it's people who worked on the referendum campaign, parents, and the community in general, to invite them to a community meeting where we're going to talk about municipal bonds and the ability to buy municipal bonds, how they would be able to get an order in for municipal bonds. So we'd like to have that retail seminar for potential investors the week of January 13th. We just learned that one of our people at our underwriting desk actually lives in the area, so I think that'll be wonderful to have her attend that as well, and hopefully we can gather up good participation so people can learn about the district's bonds, the security, the possible interest rates, and how they're able to get to purchase them. So That will be happening that week of January 13th. It's going to be a busy week. At that time, we're going to hopefully have the bond rating renewed. PFM, as your financial advisor, works with you on the bond rating. We'll also have the offering document ready. That's called a preliminary official statement. That's the information that investors get to determine whether they want to buy your bonds or not. So in that document, everything an investor would want to know about the district is in there, and we work with PFM and you to put that together before the January 13th distribution. We are also going to advertise the sale on what's called a tombstone ad. No, we didn't kill anybody, but it's just called a tombstone ad because it kind of is rectangular like a tombstone, but and it's a specific form that we have to adhere to according to FINRA and the SEC. So that's going to get advertised in the local paper on the district's website, so people know about the bonds coming to market and have a phone number they can call to get more information and get their indication of interest in regarding the school bond. So that's going to happen the week of January 13th and 20th. We'll have the ads in there for that time period. Then we're going to actually sell the bonds, if all goes well and the market is stable, the week of January 20th. We'll have a pre-pricing call on Tuesday, January 22nd. With the administration, we're going to talk about the interest rates, the market conditions, and what we see as an appropriate interest rate based on other comparable issues in the market. RJ from PFM will be a critical part of that, bringing his opinion and experience about what the levels of the interest rates are. Then we'll start upon our retail order period, where the bonds will be available. When we say retail, that means individuals. Okay, so that's where the orders and the indications of interest we might get from the community, people will be able to get their orders in at that time. And so we're not only going to advertise to local Richmond community and Macomb County community, but also that would include all individual investors in the state of Michigan. So we'll have a rank of priority orders with the local community members ranking first. They get their first choice of what bonds they want, then Macomb County and the state of Michigan overall. So our goal is to make sure those bonds get into the hands of those retail investors. The next day, we'll start the institutional order period, and that's going to drive the orders for the balance of the bonds available. And whereas, retail orders are not generally the majority of the bond issue, we just want to make sure that the people who work so hard on the referendum campaign and are going to be able to benefit from and pay the taxes on these bonds for this new edition are going to have first access to the bonds. But the institutional order period is going to be the bigger portion of the sale of the bonds. And once that's completed on January 23rd, we will have another conference call with Tammy and Brian and hopefully get your verbal approval with RJ's recommendation from PFM. We'll sign the bond purchase agreement the next day, which will lock in those rates. The board may have to adopt a ratification resolution, and we think January 27th is the right date for your meeting in January, so that's when that would occur if necessary. And then on February 12th, we close the issue. That's where the investors get their bonds and you get your money to start your project. The next page, this is an example of the tombstone ad. So this is going to be in the newspaper. It's going to talk about the par amount of the bonds, and it's going to have a lot of disclaimer stuff here, which is again driven by the regulators and the SEC that says you can get more information by reading that preliminary official statement. That's a document that has all the information about the district. And we'll have the correct phone numbers to put the orders in on that ad. And then here's an example of the invite we'd like to send out that week of January 6th to have the community meeting where people will be invited. We'd like to send that out by email, and hopefully we'll get a good crowd of some people who are interested in purchasing the bonds. So I will pause here and see if you have any questions about the process. Thank you again so much. We look forward to working with you, and look forward to seeing you again soon.
Next up, we have the first reading of the board policies. Brian?
Back in 2016, there were several bills that were passed that required school districts to adopt policy, and we had previously adopted these three policies. One is the prohibition of referral or assistance regarding abortion, reproductive health and family planning regarding abortion, and sex education as it pertains to abortion. There were some things that have changed in the law. So we were compliant as of October 1st with the previous policies. So Neola is recommending we update those policies that we've already previously adopted to now reflect the new language, which if you recall, if you look through the strike-through language on policy 2410, the prohibition of referral or assistance, it stated that an employee who referred, or had talked about abortion with a student was up to a 3% penalty of that person's annual financial compensation. So all that has changed in the actual legislation. So this policy that's recommended by Neola now brings us up to date with the actual current legislation that's out there.
Any questions for Brian? Okay, next up, we have the fiscal year 2020 budget first amendment. Tammy?
What Brian has put up in front of you is it's a summary of our revenues and expenditures. It's not the detail because that's about a 70-page document. So we summarize it for you in the categories that you see. For revenues, we split them out by local revenues, which is primarily property taxes, interest earnings, any kind of insurance rebates that we receive, that type of thing. We have state revenues, which includes our per pupil foundation, 31A revenue, Great Start Readiness preschool revenue. Then we have federal revenues, which includes our Title I, Title II, Title IV, IDEA, Perkins are all federal programs. Then we have interdistrict sources, which there's not much anymore for that, but I'll go over each of the columns. We've got a 2018-19 actual. Those are the numbers from our actual audit. Then we have a column that shows the original budget and a column that shows the amended budget. For local revenues, we increased from 3.3 million to 3.4 million, and that's primarily changes in property tax values. So property tax values went up, we'll receive more local property tax collections. On the state revenues, there's an increase of about $860,000, and that increase is primarily because they increased our foundation by $240 per pupil. We had budgeted a flat, and then we also had additional students. Under federal revenues, that went down, but that's kind of a temporary down. We're still wrapping up the grants that closed September 30th, so we will have some carryover expected for Title I, Title II, not much for Title IV. So that, although it decreased $216,000, I expect there'll be some money coming back in, and that'll be offset by the expenses that we use for those grant funds. So our revenues increased from 14.5 million to 15.3 million in total. On the expenditure projections, you can see we have each basic program: elementary, middle school, high school, preschool. We break it out for you by summarizing all the salary lines, all of the health benefit lines, which includes dental, vision, life, and medical insurance. Then we have the retirement expenditures. We have other benefits, which is our FICA, workers' comp, cash in lieu of insurance. And then we go to purchase services, which is anything from garbage disposal services, repair services for the buses if we send out a bus for work to be done. If we bring in a plumber, if we bring in an electrician, those are all purchase services. And then under supplies, obviously you know what supplies are, but they're for both. We have them instructional supplies. We have supplies throughout all of the office supplies. We have supplies for energy, which includes our Detroit Edison Electric, or gas. And then we have a category for kind of capital outlay and other. So under elementary school, there's a small increase. Most of that is in supplies. That went up about $10,000, and that was primarily for the kindergarten and first grade sections that we added. Then we go to middle school. That was our fourth grade move, so there's a significant change in our middle school salaries and benefits, as well as an increase in supplies for the additional sections and things that were needed in the classrooms, the new classrooms that we put together for the fourth grade. Then we have high school. Again, not much of a change in high school. Everything was pretty steady there, but we did adjust for any changes in insurance that we know about at this point. We will have insurance open enrollment for teaching staff that starts, I guess they're doing open enrollment now. So in January, we may have revised numbers depending on, if someone chooses to take a different insurance, because there's 4 different options for teachers, or they could change from single to person or full family, which changes our cost. Preschool decreased. Primarily, we had carryover on our GSRP grant last year. We used most of that money for carryover for the new playground for the GSRP at Lee Elementary. So we used up a significant chunk of that carryover money. We reduced it down from $80,000 down to about $20,000. So that's why the preschool has gone down.
In the preschool, this does not reflect the new GSRB classroom that will be added. So when we come back with the second amendment, we'll reflect that once we finalize what students are in that class and so forth, which we're in the process of doing right now.
Right, we'll be able to price out the teacher costs and benefits, and then any supplies that are needed for the classroom. Then we have summer school, and that was just whatever our costs were for last July's summer school. The next section, we move on to added needs, and we have special education. There was movement around in special education, so that is why you can see an increase in total special education expenditures of about $115,000.
We added 2 more parapros in special that we didn't have last year because of IEPs and support services that we needed to have.
If you move on to what's called Title I and at-risk, that's primarily, it's called compensatory education. It is for students who qualify as Title I. It's our Title II. It's also our Act 31A at-risk fund. So when our grants change up or down, the expenses go up or down. So when you saw a decrease in our federal revenues, this is one of the offsets of the federal expenditures that have decreased. So in total, that's down about $100,000. Vocational education is at the high school. We just made adjustments for salaries and benefits for staff because we did have a change in the culinary arts staff where John Estrada had started last year. Toward the end of the year, we hired Mr. Salvatore, and so this reflects all of the pay and benefits for Mr. Salvatore. We did an estimate, but now this is the actual that we have. So instructional expenses go from $8.1 million to $8.8 million, which is about a $680,000 increase. There isn't a lot of change in guidance services or psych services or speech services, although we do have a little bit of a bump in speech. We have less money, less time going over to, because of the grants. We have an allocation that we make to the non-public schools, so we have less going over for non-public students. Social work, if you remember last year, we increased our number of social workers from 2 to 3. So this is just clarifying their pay and benefits that they've actually are earning this year. Under teacher consultant services, that is down about $31,000, and that's also a function of our federal. Most of the TC is funded by federal dollars and IDEA, and so when that decreases, the services decrease as well, and our costs. That's down about $31,000. Other pupil services is primarily our Schedule B. It includes all of the extracurriculars that are non-athletic. It includes a big chunk of all of our theater, high school theater, middle school theater. Well, it's not middle school, it's K-12. And then we also have our robotics is in there. I don't know if you want to add anything about robotics.
Just as we're going through these, when you look at the elementary school, we've got 2 more staff, even though we moved 4 out. we have 2 more staff with the kindergarten and first grade. We budgeted for 3 fifth grade, but we actually have 4 fifth grade, so there's an increase there. This particular one, the effect of the settled contract for the teachers union causes a change in pet salary because those rates went up for what they're making as well as the FICA and retirement attached to it.
Then we get to improvement of instruction. Most of that, again, is funded by our federal dollars in Title II. And so when that goes down, the expenses go down. We may be able to bring that back up once we have our carryover finalized with MDE from last year's Title II. Library expenses decreased somewhat. I think there were some changes in personnel in the library. Not much of a change in our technology budget. Supervision of instructional staff, that is where we modified Shirley leaving and Christy Lashbrook coming on from a part-time position to a full-time position. The rest of the expenses on that page are pretty consistent. We have a $10,000 line item for executive administration for purchase services. That is a significant part of that was our bond campaign. Office of the Principal, we have some increase in salaries, decrease in benefits. Again, when salaries go up, FICA and retirement go up as well. Under the business office, it's pretty steady there, just the change in retirement benefits and salaries. Other business services includes the retirement incentives, and we adjusted that from what we originally estimated to what the actual is. And that's why the decrease in other business expenditures. We get to operations and maintenance.
So you also have now, we budgeted for the election expense.
Yes.
Where we didn't have it in the original one, based on the bills that have come in so far from Casco.
And Casco's the only two.
And then we have the council, so we're anticipating that to be about $10,000.
Thank you. The next major change is under pupil transportation. And as you recall, we had a bus that was totaled, so we're purchasing a new bus. The last line of pupil transportation is capital outlay and other expenses, and that's where the cost of the new bus is in the budget. Part of that was offset by insurance, but not all of it. There aren't a lot of changes as you go through from pages 12 until you get to athletics. And again, most of that is just adjusting salaries for a number of coaches that we have and their pay rates. There's an increase in there, but that was something that we had planned to do when we were in negotiations. And now this shows those estimated costs. In total, our support services increased from $6.2 million to $6.37 million, so it's up about $131,000. When you go to page 14, not a lot of changes. At the bottom is non-public school services. Again, that's our IDEA and title grants where we send staff over to the non-public schools. When the grant money goes down, our expenses go down. As you can see on page 15, there's a line for facilities acquisition and construction.
It only goes to 12.
I'm sorry?
It only credit to page 12.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, my page numbers are different from yours. Okay, so I'm probably the second from last page.
There it is, facilities.
Facilities acquisition and construction. Last year we spent about $154,000. This year, most of that is work at the high school. We're spending about $57,000, so that's up a little from our original budget, but down significantly from last year. When you get to the bottom, total general fund expenses go from $14.5 million to $15.3 million, which is an increase of just under $800,000. We had a balanced budget that we brought to you in June. This is using fund balance of about $53,000. There are a couple things that difference in the bus cost, election expenses, change in the special education director. Those are things that are significant increases in our budget that helps bring this line to the $53,000.
So if you recall, we put roughly $59,000 in fund balance in June after the audit. That 53 is about the difference between what we got in our settlement check for that bus and and what we had to come up with to pay for the new bus that we ordered.
That was a very quick overview. I don't know if you have any questions or if you want to take time to look at it and get back with us on questions.
You also have in your packet, I believe it's about 76 pages around. It is every line item, every account in there. It shows what's budgeted. If anybody has any questions regarding a line item or account, we'll be more than happy to answer them. This will be showing you on the very last page of that item, or on that document. The very last page shows you where that 53,426. Now, as Tammy mentioned, we have carryover yet that we're coming. We have insurance open enrollment, so things are going to change even one more time before we get to a final amendment. But this is where everybody's in their positions. We've instituted all contract language. There's a clause regarding a trigger that allows additional step or off-schedule payment. That's all been in and paid and accounted for. Any movements of people, they've gone line item by line item to make sure we've accounted for everything. We had a water bill that was extremely high this past summer, about $11,000. Primarily it was due because we had done some work on the field and water, but we had a couple water breaks and some plumbing issues that have happened, as I've reported, particularly at Lee, and now we got today the issue here. So there was a question regarding adding funds to for the attorney fees. The line item on here is $50,000, and we to date, or at the time we did the budget, we had only spent $5,000. So I did not add more money to the attorney fees, but if you want, we could do that. But I think we'll have plenty of money in that line item in that account. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for putting all that together. It's a lot of work. Thank you. All right, next up, we have public comment. A portion of our meeting where anyone in the audience can come and address the board. You have 3 minutes to speak. It is not a question and answer period, but if you'd like a call back, you can leave your name and number. Is there anyone who would like to address the board tonight?
Thank you, honorable board members. I'm Jeff Yark, state representative. I cover home county portion of the Richmond School District. Representative Hornberger covers the St. Clair County portions. For some of you may have met, some other people I may have not met, I always make a point of getting around throughout my district, both to local boards and council meetings, and at least once a year also I try to stop around to all the school districts and just say hi, put a face behind the name, and make sure we know you're available. I want you to know, everyone to know that I'm available to all of you. I want to talk about some issues. I want to just kind of share with you that I want to share my apologies from Lansing about the delay of getting the school budget done. I will say that our governor's budget recommendation that comes to us in March was predicated on the 45-cent gas tax increase because fundamentally there was only going to be a $1.9 billion net investment in roads, even though the tax was going to create $2.5 billion. So there's about $600 million our governor was going to use for other things through the process. Anybody wants to see documentation of that, I have that to show that that's what really the case was. I will say that my district overwhelmingly was not supportive of 45-cent gas tax, and so many of my colleagues also. But so what that meant was that a budget process, it stalled the budget process, because fundamentally, when the budget's based on an additional $2.5 billion in new revenue that people weren't supportive of, it was stalling the entire budget process. So the budget process kind of went through the summer. Normally we have the school aid budget done in around June. I know I was on the city council for 17 years when we didn't get when we didn't receive our notice of revenue sharing early. Always like getting it earlier than later because the budget year for the city of Richmond is July 1st. Always like getting that notice so we can include it, and we also didn't know. So I've always liked to get that out sooner. I hope that we're going to get a better head start. Our governor will be on her second term, it'll be her second year, and so hopefully they'll have a better chance to get their budget numbers out sooner, and we'll get to something. So that's kind of what the delay in getting that out. Ultimately, I think school aid was a positive, $240 per pupil increase. The governor's original proposal was $180 per student. The legislature supported a 2X formula. As many of you know, that those of you that are at the school districts that are at the base amount would really prefer the 2X to help bring you up, and the legislature supports 2X. Our governor went for 1.5X. So, you know, when we got to September and we couldn't get over the road funding issue, the legislature went forward with a school aid budget to try to make sure that the schools before October 1st knew what it was. And I will say that the school aid budget actually passed the legislature on a bipartisan basis. I think we passed the legislature in the House something like 94 to 15 or something. I think we had some absent members that day. So clearly there's 58 Republicans in the House, and clearly there's a lot of Democrats that were on that. So it was a bipartisan package. So, and that was sent to the governor. Overall, when I'm doing the numbers, it looks like what, $675,000 additional to the school with the $240. If I did my math correctly. $970 too, but so I mean that's a positive. You know, I support increased funding for schools, and we continue to try to move that up. So that's a positive. I noticed too from our sheets that there was a few vetoes that line item vetoes that affected the school district. I encourage you, if you're concerned about those vetoes, that those are things that I voted for and that were vetoed out. So if you have concerns, I encourage you to reach out to our governor and share that with her office, because it would require a veto override for us to change those vetoes. I mean, all of us had civics in class, and I think Mr. Ladd was just here. He probably could sit here and talk about government with quite a bit. But fundamentally, so if you're concerned about those vetoes, I encourage you to reach out, kind of things you'd like to see that returned in. I think the legislature is open to putting that money back in, except we have a little issue with the state administrative board and how that's going to work, and we need to resolve how that functions. So that's just kind of boils it down. I know you have a closed session today. Before closed session, if anybody wants to touch base, I have to give you my contact information. If you have concerns, I just want everyone to know I am available. The superintendent knows that we're available to the school district. I will say about every so many months, with the North End County superintendents would get together and have breakfast and just talk about issues. So he knows he can always reach out and talk about the issues of the Richmond Community Schools. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board? All right, moving on, we have the student representative report.
Thank you. As usual, I'll start off with the Lee School. On November 22nd, the PTO held their campus painting event. Both sessions were sold out, so they had a really great turnout. Today, the preschool had a feast to celebrate Thanksgiving. And when we come back from the break, on December 9th through the 13th, the PTO is holding their annual Santa Shop. The Green Club is collecting plastic caps for additional benches at the Lee and the middle school. And Student Council is collecting items to donate for Sandy's kids. Moving to the middle school, the PTA met on the 18th to discuss the upcoming dodgeball tournament as well as the Winterfest. The middle school robotics had a parent meeting and showcase to prepare for their upcoming competition. And this past weekend, Richmond hosted the middle school BWAC wrestling tournament. Student Council met with administration to go over holiday spirit days, and the NJHS held their annual rake and run despite the early snow. They were able to rake 14 yards in just a few hours. Lastly, the high school, this first one's a doozy. The robotics team 4130 was invited by Macomb County Planning and Economic Development Department and the Office of Mark Hackle to demonstrate the robot at the Army Artificial Intelligence Symposium. They are there on behalf of Macomb County with the Utica Community Schools Team 217. The RHS Interact Club conducted their third annual Kindness Week. Students participated in a variety of activities, and this was just a great way to spread kindness with the holidays approaching. Some art students attended the Wayne State trip to gain college experience and learn about the art program that Wayne offers. Interact has created a care closet for those in need. Personal hygiene items along with gently used coats are being collected by December 18th for the Macomb Foster Closet. The RHS Variety Show was this past weekend and it was a great success. Those in We the People competed at the district competition in Ann Arbor this past Wednesday. They worked very, very hard and they were able to place first in the competition, so really big congratulations to them. Yeah, I know they were really excited about it. And lastly, the Diversity Summit is tomorrow. 10 students from the Richmond High School and several middle school students will be attending, and this is at the MISD. Thank you.
Great, thanks Lexi. All right, next up we have items of interest from the board. Is there anybody on the board who would like to share anything tonight?
Number 10.
What's it? Oh, sorry, I jumped. Sorry, Brian.
I don't have much to
I thought you
say
were saying
other
no,
than,
Brian.
we do have, as the holidays are approaching, as Lexi said, we have many of our concerts. They are on the district calendar. We have our band and choir and elementary concerts and middle school concerts. So if you need a minute to go out there, please do. They always perform beyond expectation. Thank you to Mrs. Borwick today, filling in for Mr. Castle, and the high school staff. We had a little problem in the hallway, the pipe burst, and she was out there with no shoes on and her socks, pushing water and trying to clear away. So I appreciate everybody who pitched in at the high school to make sure, number one, our students were safe, and number two, to get it cleaned up so we can get the kids out of here. And that's all I have. There's no
Thank you, Brian.
legislative update.
Next up, we have items of interest from the board. Is there anyone on the board who would like to share anything tonight? Anybody down there? No. All right, moving on, I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session.
Pursuant to Section 8H of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I move that the Board of Education go into closed session to consider material exempt from discussion or disclosure by the state or federal statute.
Support.
Okay, is there any discussion? Chris?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
Sherry? Aye. Jessica? Aye. Margaret?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
And I vote aye. We are going into closed session. We will be taking action when we come out. We're back in open session at 7:53. And next up, we have our action items. The first one is the resolution to volunteer. Oh, geez, why? I can't read the next. I'm sorry. I think my eyes are going cross-eyed. Okay, looking for a motion to go into closed session.
Pursuant to Section 8C of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the purposes of negotiations.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Any discussion? Kyle?
Aye.
Margaret? Chris?
Aye.
Jessica? Aye. Sherry? Aye. Angela? Aye. I vote aye. We're going into closed session and we will be taking action when we come out. Back in open session at 8:25. Next up, we have some action items. All right, first up, the resolution to voluntarily recognize Teamsters Local 214 as the bargaining representatives of the administrators, formerly Richmond Administrators Association.
Motion to voluntarily recognize Teamsters Local 214 as the collective bargaining representative for the Richmond administrators as outlined in the attached resolution.
Support. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have approval of the overnight field trip request for wrestling.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the wrestling program's overnight field trip request as outlined in the attached documentation from our meeting November 11th.
Support.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next up, we have the resolution for the summer tax collection.
This is something we do every year. We ask for our taxes to be collected July 1st. We have to pass it and notify the cities. So just continue what we've done in the past.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and impose the summer property tax levy to collect all the school property taxes in each city or township in which this district is located as outlined in the attached resolution.
Support. Any discussion? Okay, Margaret? Aye. Sherry? Aye. Chris? Aye. Kyle?
Aye.
Jessica? Aye. Angela? Aye. And I vote aye. Motion passes. And we have a resolution to authorize the bond sale configurator.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the resolution authorizing the issuance and delegating the sale of funds and other matters related thereto as outlined in the attached resolution and documentation.
Support. Section 8A of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I motion that the Board of Education go into closed session to consider the periodic personnel evaluation of the superintendent.
Support.